Baylor School of Medicine, human genes are 99.9% the same. That 1%, that 0.1% is what makes us all physically different from one another. However, why should we let this define who we are? Many cultures are separated from each other, having differences. Much like the evolution theory, Black Americans have evolved from Africans. Even so, Black American and African culture are unique and different. Much of African culture was lost as soon as slaves arrived in America in 1619. Their national identity was lost and they became deprived of any African culture, including their name. African names had traditional meanings pertaining to African identity. Slaves were forced to assimilate, and this slowly deteriorated their sense of African culture. Their names were replaced with names based on their status of employment. For instance, if someone's job pertained to cotton, their last name would be Cotton. Similarly, Black Africans became identifiable through the many shades and skin tones they have. According to Lindsay Jackson's Being Black article, during slavery, the Black population began their own cultural building process. This new race of people consisted of a mix of African descent, from which part of Africa will most likely be unknown due to the lack of paperwork, a mix of European descent due to the frequent rape of African women by their master or other Caucasian male. Therefore, the population of Black African have developed to a point where they are distinguishable from the race of Africans. Today, this is shown imminent through the many shades of colors that is presented among the Black American community. They have opened the doors for new races to emerge, and thus they create a new race from which everybody else can follow behind. According to census, 80% of America speaks English, including Black Americans. Marriage is one of the traditions that are similar between Africans and Black Americans. The main purpose of a wedding is to unite two people. This, however, is similar between the two cultures. However, there are subtle differences between them that can differentiate which one is which. In Africa, it is not unusual for a family to investigate the groom's family background to further see if the family has no chronic illnesses or genetic disabilities in the family, or if a family has a good reputation, that there is no immediate family member such as a sibling, an aunt, an uncle, or anybody known to be a thief, prostitute, or murderer. They also see if the groom has no illegitimate children or has another marriage elsewhere. If a groom is good of character and well matched to the bride. Traditionally, Ethiopian weddings involve the Karo people. They enhance a young bride's beauty by tattooing her abdomen with different symbols. Similarly, Ethiopians and another people of Ghana have customs required to negotiate for both sides' family in order for a wedding to advance. If one family does not comply, then the wedding does not take place. In Sudan, the groom must pay 20 to 40 cattle for the marriage to be completed, and the marriage can only be completed if the wife bears 2 children. If the wife only bears 1 child and the husband asks for a divorce, he can ask for either the cattle or the child to be returned to him.
There is another aspect of both cultures that demonstrate their uniqueness. This aspect is the musical aspect. Traditional African music is considered to be Negro spirituals, while traditional African music has no definite term. The earliest form of Negro spirituals were influenced by African music, but typically Negro spirituals were influenced by the cultural surroundings. Thus, the styles of Negro spirituals would change over time. Traditional African music is influenced by the strong belief that rhythm is a natural part of the human body. Therefore, music is often incorporated with special occasions, work, and communication. Music is often played at birth, puberty, weddings, funerals, marriage, rites of passage, hunting, and even political activities. Black American contemporary music and African contemporary music are both unique and distinct in qualities. Black contemporary music includes rap, which is hip-hop, and African contemporary music includes high life and makossa. They both differ in instruments used to produce the music, the influences, and the structures of the songs. Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines rap as a musical style in which rhythm and/or rhyming speech is chanted or rapped to a musical accompaniment. Especially the late 1900s, rap music was influenced by the daily lives of Black Americans, which often revolves around the violence present in the ghettos, an area of the cities thickly populated by the Black families suffering from poverty. The message within raps commonly depict the daily struggles of Black Americans. A portion of Tupac's song, Me Against the World, is an epitome of the message within rap music. The question is, will I live? No one in the world loves me. I am headed for danger, don't trust stranger. But in the chamber, whenever I'm feeling this anger, don't want to make excuses, cause this is how it is. High life evolved from Ghana, while Makossa evolved from Westlife. High life was influenced by American music, such as R&B and reggae. Makossa was influenced by high life and Jamaican music. Overall, the influence of contemporary African music came from the Americas. In raps, the lyrics are present through a large portion of the song. Many rap lyrics follow a poetical structure. Most of the lyrics in rap follow a certain structure that consists of 3 verses and 16 bars. This means 3 stanzas, 16 lines each stanza. Also, raps commonly follow Shakespeare's iambic pentameter, a pattern of stressed and unstressed syllables. Often, a rapper's lyric technique would follow that of a writer. For example, Kanye West's use of comparisons resemble F. Scott Fitzgerald's use of extended simile. Most of the time, the lyrics are accompanied by computer-generated rhythmic sounds or beats.
By Dr. Dre.
In Makossa and High Life, the focus is more towards the instrumentals instead of the vocals. Makossa utilizes little instruments in song, which includes pianos, guitars, and drums. High Life would utilize African drums, guitars, accordions, and harmonicas.
American culture and African culture are different. Some Black American cultures were derived from Africa. Take Black American literature and oral tradition, for example. In West Africa, it was a tradition to tell stories and folk tales. West Africans were then brought to America as slaves. As slaves, when they had the free time, they used to tell each other folk tales about animals to teach their children a moral or entertain themselves or others. During the Harlem Renaissance period, famous folklorists who studied the history of folk tales, like Zora Neale Hurston, for example, collected many different folk tales and published a book filled with African folk tales. To gather her information, Hurston traveled from Florida to Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and other states. She had written the book Mules and Men, which had many African folk tales on animal tales, religious tales, and others. Many other African American writers during the Harlem Renaissance period has passed along these traditional folk tales that had come from Africa. Since the folklorists had to hear the stories from many people, everyone's story didn't always match up, so the authors had to fill in the gap. So you see how the stories may have changed over time, but it still remains the main idea of the story. Later on came a time when authors who rewrote these tales wanted the stories to appeal to an even younger generation, and again, the stories had to be changed around. This is how African oral tradition made a contribution to Black American and now American literature. For example, Brer Rabbit, Beowulf, and Sis Nanny were some folk tales that originated from West Africa. And now you can find Brer Rabbit and Aunt Nancy appear in American literature. The Chicken Little also comes from African folk tales spread during the time of slavery. You probably wouldn't believe me if I told you, but some dances and music from Black American culture is also derived from African culture. One of the most popular dances in northern Congo is the Juba, or Jaba. Around the 1700s, enslaved Africans were brought from Congo to Charleston, South Carolina, not allowed to use any kind of instruments because white Americans thought it was a way of communication for blacks. They did the Juba dance during their free time, which involves stomping, slapping, clapping, and patting their body parts to make music. The Juba dance has evolved over time and given the name Charleston by the Europeans. Ombligate was another dance from Central Africa that was performed by African slaves. Enslaved Africans came to Congo Square to perform this dance. This dance has later on evolved over time and given the name Congo Square by the Europeans. Congo Square has been a part of Black American culture since then. During the Middle Passage, African instruments such as the banjo are now known as the banjo or the mbira now known as the thumb piano, were brought to the Americans, were modified and changed around, then introduced to the Europeans, and its music was carried on by the Black Americans. The Black Americans incorporated these instruments in their music that carried on the culture. Ida Lucille Reed and Danny Barker were famous Black American musicians who incorporated banjo into their music.
Thanks for watching! And the next time, I'm taller than him.